Elvis calls John Lennon in the early morning. What he said left Yoko in tears. June 14th, 1977. 3:17 in the morning. The phone rang in apartment 72 of the Dakota building, slicing through the silence like a knife. John Lennon woke instantly, his heart racing. Nobody called at 3 a.m. with good news. Beside him, Yoko stirred, her eyes opening in the darkness. "Don't answer it," she whispered, that sixth sense of hers already warning her. But John was already reaching for the phone. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Heavy, labored breathing. "Hello?" John repeated, irritation creeping into his voice. "John Lennon?" The voice was thick, slurred, but unmistakable. John sat up straight in bed, suddenly wide awake. "Elvis?" Yoko turned on the bedside lamp, her face pale. "Yeah," Elvis said, the words stretched out and broken. "Yeah, it's me, Elvis. I hope I didn't wake you." John looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. "It's 3 in the morning, mate." "Is it?" Elvis sounded genuinely confused. "I lose track of time these days. Everything just blends together." There was something in Elvis's voice that made John's chest tighten. This wasn't the smooth, confident king of rock and roll. This was someone drowning. "Are you all right?" John asked, his annoyance replaced by concern. Elvis laughed, but it was a hollow, broken sound. "Am I all right? That's funny. That's really funny." "No, John. No. I'm not all right. I haven't been all right in a long time." Yoko moved closer, pressing her ear near the phone so she could hear. "Where are you?" John asked. "Graceland. Memphis. Middle of the night. I'm sitting in my TV room watching 3 televisions at once, and I needed to talk to someone who might understand." "Understand what?" "What it's like," Elvis said, his voice cracking. "What it's really like. To be us. To be them. The people everyone thinks they know." John felt Yoko's hand grip his arm. "Elvis, have you been drinking?" "Drinking. Pills. Whatever the doctor gives me to make it through another day." Elvis paused. "Actually, that's a lie. To make it through another performance, another moment of pretending I'm still the king when I feel like a ghost." The raw honesty was shocking. John had met Elvis once, back in 1965. A brief, awkward encounter at Elvis's Bel Air home. They'd both been guarded, circling each other like boxers in a ring. 2 kings who couldn't quite figure out how to be human around each other. But this was different. This was Elvis with all his armor stripped away. "Why are you calling me?" John asked gently. "Not that I mind, but why now? Why tonight?" Elvis was quiet for so long that John thought he might have passed out. Then, "Because I read an interview you did. Last month, you talked about walking away from it all. About choosing to be happy over being famous. About baking bread and raising your son and just being a person." "Yeah," John said quietly, "I did say that. And I thought," Elvis's voice broke completely, "I thought, how did he do it? How did John Lennon figure out how to walk away when I can't even figure out how to survive another day?" Yoko's eyes filled with tears. John looked at her, then back at the phone. "Elvis, where are you right now?" "Exactly. TV room, Graceland, alone. Always alone." "Is there anyone there with you? Anyone who can help?" "Help? With what?" Elvis asked bitterly. "Help me die slower? That's all anyone does anymore. They give me pills to keep me going, and pills to make me stop, and pills to help me forget that I'm a 42-year-old man who can barely recognize himself in the mirror." The desperation in his voice was physical. John made a decision. "Elvis, listen to me. Are you listening?" "Yeah. I'm going to stay on the phone with you, as long as you need. But you need to tell me the truth. Are you safe right now?" "Safe?" Elvis laughed again. That terrible hollow sound. "I'm in a house with 15 people who work for me, and I'm the most unsafe I've ever been in my life." What does that mean? It means I'm dying, John. Slowly. And everyone can see it except me. Or maybe I can see it and I just don't know how to stop it. Yoko grabbed a pen and paper, writing quickly. Keep him talking. Don't let him hang up. John nodded. All right, John said, his voice steady. Then let's talk. Really talk. No bullshit, no pretending. Just two blokes who ended up in the same strange place trying to figure out what the hell happened. You really want to listen to me ramble? Elvis asked, vulnerability bleeding through every word. Yeah, John said simply. I really do. Why? Because 10 years ago, you were my hero. And right now, you sound like you need a friend more than a fan. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Elvis spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't have friends anymore, John. I have employees, people who depend on me, people who need me to keep being Elvis so they can keep getting paid. But friends, people who give a damn about me instead of what I can do for them, those are gone. Then let me be your friend tonight, John said, for the next hour, for however long you need. Let's just be two people talking, not Elvis and John Lennon, just Elvis and John. I'd like that, Elvis said, and for the first time, there was something like hope in his voice. John settled back against the headboard. Yoko curled beside him. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were about to spend the next 47 minutes listening to Elvis Presley's confession, his regrets, his pain, his desperate hope that maybe somehow it wasn't too late to change. It was the most honest conversation Elvis had with anyone in years, and it would be one of his last. When did it start going wrong? John asked. Elvis was quiet for a moment, the sound of ice clinking in a glass coming through the phone. That's the thing, Elvis said finally. I don't know if it ever went right. Everyone thinks there was this golden time when I had it all figured out. But John, I've been lost since 1958. What happened in 1958? My mother died. The words fell heavy. After that, nothing felt real anymore. I'd be on stage, thousands of people screaming, and all I could think was that the one person who loved me for me was gone. Everyone else loved Elvis Presley, but Mama loved Elvis Aaron, and when she died, he died too. Yoko wiped tears from her eyes. I understand that, John said quietly. Losing your mother when you're young, it breaks something fundamental. You lost yours too, didn't you? Elvis asked. Car accident. I was 17. Then you know, Elvis said. You know what it's like to spend the rest of your life trying to fill that hole, and nothing ever fits. No, John agreed. Nothing ever does. They sat in that shared understanding for a moment. Two men who'd conquered the world but couldn't conquer grief. Tell me about the interview, Elvis said. The one where you talked about being happy. Because I need to know if it's possible, if someone like us can actually find peace. John looked at Yoko, who nodded encouragingly. It's possible, John said, but it requires something that's terrifying. What? Letting go of who you thought you were supposed to be. Elvis laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You walked away from the Beatles at the height of your fame. I'm stuck being Elvis until the day I die. You're not stuck, John said firmly. You're choosing to stay. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, because walking away is a choice. A hard one, but a choice. I can't walk away, Elvis said. Too many people depend on me. My father, my aunt, all the guys who work for me. If I stop, they stop. If I quit, they're out of jobs. So you're killing yourself to keep other people comfortable? The bluntness of it made Elvis flinch. That's harsh, man. It's true, John said, and you know it is. Elvis was silent. When I left the Beatles, John continued, everyone said I was selfish, that I was abandoning my responsibility, that I owed it to the fans, to the band, to the world to keep going. What did you tell them? Nothing. because I realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing to live my life on my terms. But the guilt will eat you alive if you let it, John interrupted. Trust me, I know. I carried guilt about my son Julian for years, about the Beatles, about every choice I made. But you know what? The guilt was just fear dressed up as responsibility. Fear of what? Fear of being nobody. Fear that without the fame, without the music, without people screaming your name, you're nothing. Elvis's breathing became heavier on the other end of the line. And are you? Elvis asked, his voice small. Nothing? No, John said simply. I'm John. I'm a husband, a father, a guy who bakes bread and changes diapers and argues with his wife about stupid things. And it's the most real I've ever felt in my life. I don't know how to be just Elvis, Elvis admitted. I've been Elvis Presley for so long that I don't remember who Elvis Aaron was before all of this. Then maybe it's time to find out. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. It's too late for that, Elvis said, despair seeping into every word. Why? Because I'm overweight. I'm addicted to pills. I can barely get through a show without forgetting lyrics or falling down. The man I was is gone, and the man I am is dying. Yoko took the phone gently from John. Elvis, she said, her voice soft but firm. This is Yoko. Oh, hi Yoko. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Stop apologizing, she interrupted. I want to tell you something. When I met John, he was broken too. Different circumstances, but broken. And you know what I learned? What? That broken things can be put back together. Not the same way they were before, but into something new. Something that works. I don't know if I have enough pieces left to put together, Elvis said, his voice cracking. Then start with what you have, Yoko said. Start with this moment, right now. You called John because you needed help. That's the first step. Admitting you can't do this alone. I've been alone for so long, Elvis whispered. Even when I'm surrounded by people, I'm alone. I know that feeling, Yoko said. I felt it for years. But loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about not being seen, not being known. And Elvis, right now, in this moment, you're being seen, you're being known, and you're not alone. Elvis broke down completely. The sound of his sobbing came through the phone, raw and unguarded. John and Yoko sat there, holding the phone between them, letting Elvis release years of pain. When he finally spoke again, his voice was hoarse. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to stop being who everyone needs me to be and start being who I need me to be. One choice at a time, John said, taking the phone back. That's all any of us can do. One honest choice at a time. What would be the first choice? Telling someone the truth, John said. Someone in your life who can actually help you. Not enable you, help you. Everyone around me enables me, Elvis said bitterly. That's what they're paid to do. Then find someone who isn't paid to be there. Someone who gives a damn about Elvis, not Elvis Presley. I don't know if that person exists anymore. Then create them, Yoko said, leaning into the phone again. Find one person, just one, and tell them what you told us tonight. That you're scared, that you're hurting, that you need help. Who would I even call? Someone from before, John suggested. Someone who knew you when you were just a kid from Memphis. Elvis was quiet, thinking. There's a woman, he said slowly. Linda Thompson. We were together for years. She tried to help me, tried to get me to see what I was doing to myself, but I pushed her away. Call her, John said firmly. Tomorrow, when the sun comes up and you're sober. Call her and tell her what you told us. She probably hates me. Or she's been waiting for you to admit you need help, Yoko said. People who love you don't stop loving you because you're broken. They just wait for you to let them in. Elvis was crying again, but softer now. I'm scared, he admitted. I'm so scared of being vulnerable, of admitting I can't handle this. Being scared means you're still human, John said. It's when you stop being scared that you should worry. They talked for another 20 minutes, about fear, about change, about the courage it takes to admit you're not okay. And slowly, something shifted in Elvis's voice. The desperation eased, the hopelessness softened. Not gone, but less crushing. Thank you, Elvis said finally, for not hanging up, for not treating me like I'm crazy. You're not crazy, John said. You're hurting. There's a difference. Can I call you again, if I need to? John looked at Yoko, who nodded without hesitation. Yeah, John said. Anytime, day or night. If you need someone to talk to, call. I will, Elvis said. I promise I will. They said their goodbyes, and John hung up the phone. The apartment was silent except for the sound of the city outside. John and Yoko sat there in the darkness, processing what had just happened. Do you think he'll actually get help? Yoko asked quietly. I don't know, John admitted, but we gave him a reason to try. And sometimes that's all you can do. They went back to sleep, holding each other close. Neither of them knowing that in 6 weeks, Elvis would be gone, and this phone call would become one of their most painful memories. June 15th, 1977. John woke up thinking about the phone call, about Elvis's voice, broken and desperate, about the man behind the legend, drowning in his own fame. Do you think he'll call back? Yoko asked over breakfast. I hope so, John said, but I don't know. They spent the day in a strange limbo, waiting for the phone to ring, hoping Elvis had reached out to someone who could actually help him. But the call never came. Not that day. Not the next. Not the week after. John tried calling Graceland once, but the person who answered said Mr. Presley wasn't taking calls. Tell him John Lennon called, John said. I'll pass along the message, the voice said, professional and detached. But Elvis never called back. July passed, then the first week of August. John and Yoko tried not to worry, but the silence felt ominous. On August 16th, 1977, John was at home with 5-year-old Sean when the phone rang. It was George Harrison. John, have you heard? Heard what? Elvis, he's dead. They found him at Graceland this afternoon. The world stopped. John sat down heavily, the phone pressed to his ear. What happened? Heart attack, they're saying, but everyone knows it was the pills, the lifestyle. His body gave out. John hung up and immediately told Yoko. She burst into tears. We should have done more, she sobbed. We should have called someone. We did what we could, John said, though his voice was hollow. We stayed on the phone. We listened. We tried to help. But it wasn't enough. No, John agreed quietly. It wasn't enough. The guilt hit them both like a wave. They'd been among the last people Elvis reached out to, had heard his desperation, his cry for help, and then he died alone in a bathroom, surrounded by the very pills he'd confessed were killing him. For days, John couldn't stop thinking about it, about Elvis's voice on the phone, about his admission that he was dying, about the way he'd sounded almost hopeful at the end of the call. Had they given him false hope? Had they made it worse? The questions haunted John. At Elvis's funeral, attended by thousands, John wanted to stand up and scream the truth, that Elvis had been crying out for help, that he'd known he was dying, that he'd tried to reach out, but he didn't, because that phone call had been private, sacred even, and John wouldn't betray Elvis's trust by making it public. Instead, he and Yoko carried the secret. the weight of it pressing down on them every time someone talked about Elvis's death. If only someone had helped him, people would say, and John and Yoko would exchange glances, knowing that someone had tried. Just not hard enough, not soon enough, not in a way that actually saved him. September 1977, a month after Elvis's death, John was in the studio, trying to work, when a package arrived. It was from Graceland. No return address, just a Memphis postmark. Inside was a cassette tape and a letter. John's hand shook as he read the letter. It was dated June 15, 1977, the day after the phone call. Dear John and Yoko, I'm writing this the morning after I called you. I'm sober now, clear-headed for the first time in months, and I wanted to thank you for not hanging up, for listening, for treating me like a person instead of a legend. I recorded something last night after we hung up. I was going to send it to you right away, but I chickened out. Too raw, too honest, too much. But I want you to have it. If something happens to me, I want someone to know who I really was. Not Elvis Presley the entertainer, but Elvis Aaron, the scared kid who never figured out how to grow up. Thank you for reminding me that it's not too late to change. I'm going to try. I really am. Your friend, Elvis John, sat there, staring at the letter, tears streaming down his face. Yoko came into the room, and he showed her. They read it together, holding each other. Then John put the cassette into the tape player. What they heard next would stay with them forever. Elvis's voice, clear and unguarded, speaking into a microphone in the early hours of June 15th. I don't know if I'll ever send this, Elvis said on the tape. But I need to say it out loud. Need to admit it to someone, even if it's just myself. He paused, the sound of him taking a deep breath audible. I'm dying. Not slowly, not maybe. I'm dying, and I know it. My body is giving out. My heart is barely functioning. The doctors keep giving me pills to keep me going, but all they're doing is prolonging the inevitable. The raw honesty was devastating. I called John Lennon tonight because I needed to talk to someone who understood, who knew what it was like to be trapped in something bigger than yourself. And you know what he told me? He told me I had a choice, that I could walk away, that I could choose to live instead of just existing. Elvis's voice cracked. And he's right. I could choose differently. Could fire everyone who's enabling me, could check into rehab, could actually get help instead of just talking about it. But here's the truth I told him on the phone and couldn't fully admit. I don't know if I want to. The confession was stunning. Because being Elvis Presley is all I know, and the idea of being nobody terrifies me more than dying as somebody. John stopped the tape, unable to continue. He knew. John whispered. He knew he was going to die, and he chose it anyway. Not chose, Yoko said gently. He just couldn't find the strength to choose differently. They listened to the rest of the tape. Elvis talking about his regrets, his daughter Lisa Marie, his failed marriages, his wasted potential. If I could do it over, Elvis said near the end, I'd be braver. I'd walk away when I still could. I'd choose life over legend. But it's too late for that now. All I can do is hope that maybe someone will hear this someday and learn from my mistakes. That fame isn't worth your life. That no amount of love from strangers can replace loving yourself. The tape ended with Elvis saying one final thing. To John and Yoko, if you're hearing this, thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me. Even if it was just for one phone call. It meant more than you'll ever know. John and Yoko sat in silence long after the tape ended, the weight of Elvis's confession crushing down on both of them. We have to keep this private, Yoko said finally. This was his truth, his privacy. We can't share it. I know, John agreed, but God, I wish we could. I wish people knew how much he was suffering, how hard he tried. They'll figure it out eventually, Yoko said. History always reveals the truth. John kept the tape in a locked drawer, never spoke about it publicly, never betrayed Elvis's trust, but he thought about it often. About the man behind the legend who'd been so lonely that he'd called a near stranger at 3 a.m. About the desperation in his voice, the hope, the fear, and about how sometimes even when people cry out for help, the help comes too late. Years passed. John's own life continued. Music, family, the quiet domesticity he'd chosen. But Elvis's phone call haunted him, especially when people would ask about Elvis in interviews. "Did you know him well?" they'd ask. And John would say, "We met once, briefly." A lie by omission, because he did know Elvis, had known him in the most intimate way possible, had heard his fears, his regrets, his desperate hope for something better. But he couldn't say that without betraying the privacy of that call. In 1980, John did an interview where he was asked about regrets. He paused, thinking about Elvis. "I regret not doing more for people who needed help," John said carefully. "There were times when people reached out and I thought I was helping. But looking back, I wonder if I could have done more." The interviewer asked him to elaborate. "There's someone," John said, choosing his words carefully, "someone who called me once, in the middle of the night. They were in trouble, real trouble. And I listened. I tried to give advice. But ultimately, they made their own choices. And those choices led to, well, they're not here anymore." "Do you feel responsible?" "Every day," John admitted. "Even though logically I know I'm not. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. But that doesn't make it easier to accept." Yoko, listening to the interview later, knew exactly who John was talking about. They never discussed it, but the guilt was mutual. What if they'd called the next day to check on him? What if they'd contacted someone at Graceland, raised the alarm? What if they'd done more than just listen? The what-ifs were endless and torturous. But there was something else too, a strange gratitude, because that phone call had taught them something important, about the cost of fame, about the importance of reaching out, about being present for people when they need you. After Elvis died, John became more intentional about checking on friends, calling people who seemed distant, being available when someone needed to talk. He couldn't save Elvis, but maybe he could help someone else. Yoko did the same, became more vocal about mental health, about the importance of vulnerability, about asking for help. She never mentioned Elvis by name, but his death informed everything she did. In December 1980, just months after that interview, John Lennon was shot and killed outside the Dakota. Yoko was left to carry the memory of that phone call alone, and she understood, finally, what Elvis must have felt. The loneliness, the isolation, the desperate need to be seen as human instead of as a symbol. After John died, Yoko went back and listened to Elvis's tape, heard him talking about regret, about wasted time, about not having the courage to change, and she wept for Elvis, for John, for all the brilliant, talented people crushed under the weight of their own fame. They saw each other, Yoko would later say, in a private conversation with a friend. For one phone call, Elvis and John really saw each other, and that mattered. Even if it didn't save Elvis, it mattered. For 40 years, the story of that phone call remained hidden. Yoko kept the tape locked away, kept the letter private, honored Elvis and John's privacy. But in 2017, something changed. Yoko was giving an interview about John's legacy when the interviewer asked about Elvis. "There's a persistent rumor that Elvis called John shortly before his death. Is there any truth to that?" Yoko paused. She was 84 years old. Elvis had been gone for 40 years. John for 37. The people who might be hurt by the truth were mostly gone, and the people who might be helped by it were everywhere. Struggling artists, addicts, anyone drowning in expectations they couldn't meet. "Yes," Yoko said simply. "It's true." The interviewer leaned forward, stunned. "Can you tell me about it?" Yoko thought carefully about what to share and what to keep private. "Elvis called at 3 a.m., Yoko began. June 14th, 1977. He was in a bad place, struggling with addiction, loneliness, the pressure of being Elvis Presley. What did he say? He told John that he didn't know how to walk away, that he felt trapped, that he was dying and didn't know how to save himself. What did John tell him? That it was never too late to change, that he had a choice, that happiness was possible if he was brave enough to choose it. Did Elvis take that advice? Yoko's eyes filled with tears. He tried. I think he really tried. But sometimes the weight is too heavy. Sometimes the addiction is too strong. Sometimes people don't make it. Do you think you and John could have done more? We asked ourselves that every day after he died, Yoko admitted. And the answer is maybe. Maybe if we'd called back. Maybe if we'd reached out to someone at Graceland. Maybe. But ultimately, Elvis made his own choices. And we can't save people from themselves. We can only be present when they reach out. And hope that our presence gives them strength. The interview made headlines. The revelation that Elvis had called John Lennon, that he'd asked for help, that he'd died just weeks later. It changed the narrative around Elvis's death. Instead of just a cautionary tale about excess, it became a story about reaching out, about trying, about the courage it takes to admit you're not okay. Mental health organizations used the story in their outreach. Elvis Presley called for help, they'd say. Even legends struggle. Even the strongest people need support. It's okay to ask for help. Addiction recovery programs talked about it too. Elvis knew he was dying. He reached out. But one phone call wasn't enough. Recovery requires ongoing support, community, professional help. The story became bigger than Elvis or John. It became about all of us, about how we show up for each other, about how we respond when someone is drowning. In 2020, Yoko made the decision to release the tape Elvis had recorded, with the permission of Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's daughter. Lisa Marie listened to it first, hearing her father's voice confessing his struggles. "People need to hear this," Lisa Marie said, tears streaming down her face. "My father struggled in silence for so long. If his story can help someone else speak up sooner, then his death means something." The tape was released as part of a mental health awareness campaign. Elvis's voice, talking about fear and addiction and the prison of fame. It was raw, painful, honest, and it helped people. Thousands of people who heard Elvis's confession reached out for help themselves, recognizing their own struggles in his words, finding courage in his vulnerability. That phone call saved lives, Yoko said years later. Not Elvis's life, but others. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what it was meant to do. The story of Elvis's phone call to John Lennon is now part of rock and roll history, a footnote in the biographies, a moment captured in the documentaries. But for those who understand its true significance, it's so much more. It's a reminder that fame doesn't protect you from pain, that success doesn't shield you from suffering, that even kings can drown in the very thing that made them royal. Elvis Presley died at 42 years old, alone in a bathroom, surrounded by the pills that were supposed to help him. But in his final weeks, he'd reached out, had tried to find a way through the darkness, had admitted to John and Yoko that he needed help. And even though that help didn't save him, it mattered, because it showed that he was trying. Right up until the end, John Lennon understood that, carried the weight of that phone call for the rest of his life, and in his own way, used it to inform how he lived, being more present, more available, more honest about his own struggles. "We're all just walking each other home," John said in an interview in 1980, just months before his death. That's what life is, being there for each other, listening when someone needs to talk, showing up when someone is drowning. Even if we can't save them, we can bear witness. We can say, I see you, I hear you, you're not alone. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Those words, spoken by John but informed by Elvis, became a kind of philosophy, a way of approaching human connection with compassion and presence. Today, the Dakota Building still stands on 72nd Street. Inside apartment 72, where that phone call happened, the current residents have no idea of the significance. Don't know that on a June night in 1977, two legends connected in the most human way possible. One asking for help, the other trying to give it. Both of them, in their own way, drowning. But finding for 47 minutes a kind of understanding that transcended fame and legacy. Elvis Presley and John Lennon never spoke again after that night. But the conversation continued. In the choices John made afterward, in the guilt he carried, in the lessons he learned, and eventually, decades later, in the story being shared so that others might learn from it. People ask me if I wish we could have saved Elvis, Yoko said in her final interview on the subject. And I tell them, we couldn't save Elvis. Only Elvis could save Elvis. But what we could do, and what we did do, was listen, was be present, was show him that someone cared. And in the end, that's all any of us can offer each other. Not salvation, just presence, just love, just the willingness to stay on the phone at 3 a.m. when someone is falling apart. John gave Elvis that, and Elvis's call gave John something too. A reminder that the cost of this life is high, that fame can destroy as easily as it elevates, and that the most important thing we can do is be human with each other, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when we can't fix it. We show up, we listen, we bear witness. And sometimes that's the only thing that matters. The phone in apartment 72 doesn't ring at 3 a.m. anymore. John is gone. Elvis is gone. That moment in time has passed, but the lesson remains. When someone reaches out in their darkness, you answer. You stay on the line. You listen. You care. Not because it will definitely save them, but because it might. And because in the end, all we have is each other. Two voices in the darkness, reaching across the void, trying to connect, trying to be less alone, trying to be human in a world that often demands we be more than human. Elvis called. John answered. And for 47 minutes, two kings were just two men, scared, hurting, hoping, human. When people ask Yoko about that night, about why Elvis's call left her in tears, she tells them this. It wasn't just sadness. It was recognition. I heard in Elvis's voice what I'd heard in John's voice during his darkest moments. The fear, the isolation, the desperate need to be seen as something other than a legend. And I cried because I knew that feeling, had felt it myself, the loneliness of being famous, of being reduced to a symbol instead of being accepted as a person. Elvis was crying out, and we heard him, really heard him. But it wasn't enough, and that's what breaks my heart still. That sometimes, even when we do everything we can, it's not enough. But we tried, and Elvis knew we tried. And I have to believe that mattered. Even if it didn't save him, it mattered. Today, there's a small memorial at Graceland. Not official, just something fans created. A phone painted gold sitting beside a plaque that reads, "In memory of the conversations we never had, the help we never asked for, the connections we were too afraid to make, may we all be brave enough to call, and brave enough to answer." It's become a place where people leave notes, messages about their own struggles, their own calls for help, their own moments of connection that saved them. I called my friend at 2 a.m., one note reads, because of Elvis's story, because I learned it's okay to admit you're not okay. She answered, and she saved my life. Another note. I answered when my brother called at 3 a.m. I stayed on the line. Because of what John did. And now my brother is 2 years sober. Thank you for showing us how. The story of that phone call ripples outward, touching lives, saving people, creating connections. Not because Elvis was saved, but because his struggle, his reaching out, his vulnerability, taught the rest of us something essential. That it's never too late to ask for help, and it's never wrong to offer it, even at 3 a.m., even when it's hard, even when you don't know what to say. You answer, you listen, you care. And sometimes that's the difference between life and death, between hope and despair, between being alone and being seen. Elvis made that call. John answered. And decades later, we're all still learning from it. So now you know the secret that Yoko Ono carried for 40 years, the phone call that changed everything and saved nothing. The moment when two legends were just two men trying to survive the weight of being extraordinary. If this story moved you, if you understand what it means to reach out in darkness and hope someone answers, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know it's okay to ask for help. And tell us, have you ever been on either end of that 3 a.m. phone call? Let us know in the comments. Because maybe, just maybe, sharing our stories is how we save each other. One conversation at a time, one moment of honest connection, one willingness to stay on the line when someone is drowning. That's how we honor Elvis. That's how we honor John, by being brave enough to reach out and brave enough to answer.